Hello, guys, and welcome back to my pre recorded webinar session here on this new home for the Diabetic Desk videos. Please subscribe. I really appreciate you guys so much. Today, we're going to look at Beyond Food and we're going to look at the outlook to drivers of blood sugar control. So, when we talk about blood sugar, control, the conversation mostly centers around food. Like it starts with food and with food. What should I eat? What should I avoid? What did I eat wrong? Watch the previous episode to know the traditional approach when it comes to managing diabetes. But if you keep on reading recent studies being done, science tells us the blood sugar is not controlled by food alone. Even as a healthy person, you're not controlled by food alone. It's regulated by hormones, which we're going to look at in this session. Influenced by our sleep. If you tuned in last night to our The Nutritionist Corner, our speaker Grace encourages us to prioritize sleep, shaped by stress, level of stress that you have, and also affected by movement and deeply connected to our day to day life. So, in this session, I want us to look beyond food, and I want us to understand the overlooked drivers of blood sugar control. And we're going to use science in this platform. I do not blame. Even when you watch that previous episode about how traditionally we approach the management of diabetes, I wasn't blaming. I was just giving my side of the story as someone who's doing or researching on the diabetic field. So we're not going to blame. So my name is Charity Onyonyi. I'm a founder of the Diabetic Desk. So if you want to collaborate, work with me, wait till the end so that you can get my contact and we can do more. If you want to feature on this space, I'll be carrying out lives. We'll be talking all about diabetes. Yes. So why does this conversation really matter, or why is it necessary? Many people tell me, especially when I worked in the diabetic clinic, I think that's where my passion for diabetes came from. I'm eating well, but my sugar is still high. Like, you've cancelled this patient, you've educated this patient, but the next day they come, the sugars are 30. And you could see the frustration because of the short-term complication of diabetes. They're not able to have a good quality of life, and they are frustrated, and that is valid because they are following exactly what you're telling them to do. Blood sugar regulation for me is a system and not a single behavior. So if we only focus on food, so if I'm a nutritionist and only focused on food, and maybe I can see there's something in between the lines, we often miss the bigger picture, and people end up feeling like they are failing. And once a diabetic patient feel like they're failing, they're going to go back to eating anyhow. And when in reality, it's maybe the biology that we have not fully addressed this other section or this other driver that we're going to look at in this person's life. So this conversation to me is very necessary because we are going to get to understand why blood sugar behave the way it does, and in the first step towards just improving. So I'm just going to give my suggestion because we are thought leader in this platform. So blood sugar is regulated by system and not just by meals alone. So we're going to look at how science is going to show us the multiple drivers of blood sugar control and how these drivers can really be informed when it comes to changing how we manage the new age diabetes. So we're going to look at the myth. This is that food is only drivers. I'm not saying food, because nutrition is central-ish when it comes to management of diabetes. But there's a common myth in diabetes care that food, especially carbohydrates, is the main villain. Yeah, of the story, is the main driver of our blood sugar control, which it is. I'm not disputing that. Food matters, yes, but it's not the only signal the body responds to. When we treat food as the sole cause, we ignore hormonal regulation, we ignore stress physiology, we ignore sleep deprivation, muscles activity, if someone is exercising or not, or doing physical activity, recovery and timing. So this narrow view leads to frustration, and incomplete care. You know, that's just something I want to challenge anyone who's working in the diabetic field to really think about. So we're going to look at blood sugar. Um, is a hormonal outcome. Yes, so stay with me in this train of thought, guys. So blood sugar levels are not random. Okay, random they're taken when they're especially you go to the clinic on a random day, random time, your test is taken. But for me, I believe blood glucose level reflects our hormonal control and our hormonal balance. So the three key hormones that regulate blood glucose or blood sugars are insulin. So insulin moves glucose from the blood into the cell. Cortisol, which is a stress hormone, raises blood sugar during stress. So when you're going through stressful situation, flight action, cortisol is released to raise the blood sugar level so that it can give you that bout of energy to manage that particular stress. Glucagon releases stored glucose between meals. So when you've stayed a while without eating, glucagon signals the release of glucose so that you can still have energy to continue carrying on with your day. So these hormones respond not only to food but also to sleep, also to stress, and also to the level of activity you're in. This is why blood sugar is better understood as a hormonal outcome and not just a dietary one. I wanted us to understand this because um the main aim of this episode is to show there are multiple drivers to blood sugar level control. Yeah. So I hope you've understood each other in this particular slide. So we're going to look at the first driver, which is insulin sensitivity. And if you follow me across all I'm going to go back to creating content across all my social media platform, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I had a Friday series titled Insulin Resistance and Sensitivity, and I used to talk about how to just improve your insulin sensitivity because we want to prevent it from being insulin resistant that can transition into prediabetes, which can transition into type 2 or any diabetes. Yeah. So insulin sensitivity refers to how responsive your cells are to insulin. Yeah. When insulin sensitivity is the goal, cells easily take in glucose. There's no struggle like when you have insulin resistance. Blood sugar stays stable. Yeah. So when insulin sensitivity is low, which means there's a rise in your insulin sensitivity, your cells don't respond well when it's signaled. The pancreas produces more insulin because there's more glucose in your blood, and then blood sugar or blood glucose control becomes way, way much harder. And then insulin resistance often develops years before diabetes is diagnosed. And that was the main goal I had when I started that series across all my social media platforms. I was trying my best to break down those jargons into easy to understood terminologies because this slide, I know if someone is really not keen, they will not get what is insulin resistant. So I hope you've understood insulin sensitivity as a driver. When you have insulin resistant and when you tuned in last year to our PCOS awareness month, we really talked at length about insulin resistance and how it plays a role when it comes to different metabolic syndrome. So I hope we've understood this as a driver of blood glucose control. So we're going to look at driver number two, which is physical activity. I'm going to look beyond exercise. When I was doing my presentation in our department, and physical activity was one of the determinants I was looking at, and then the professor was asking me, so these people you took exercise activity levels, were they only going to the gym exercising, or were they doing other activity, and that really challenged me because I feel like we look at physical activity only someone who is working out, going to the gym, and we keep on forgetting physical activity can involve you walking from here to there, doing house chores. You're still doing physical activity. You're still using energy. So physical activity means any movement that uses energy and not just gym workout. So that challenged me, and that became one of my limitation of my study. So this includes walking, cleaning, gardening, climbing stairs, standing more, walking from one point to the next. That is physical activity. And muscles can take up glucose without insulin during movement. This makes physical activity one of the fastest way to improve your blood sugar control. That's why when you look at most science these days, are you encouraged to walk after you've eaten to help your body break down or use the food you have eaten. So when you're told to exercise, when you're told to be physically active, this is why it is important. And breaking long and sitting time improves. I've just spoken. Improves glucose regulation. Even if someone um exercises later. And especially if those people working 9 to 5 jobs, you don't have time to rest. You're always sitting on your desk, you don't move. So you find that you start to develop insulin resistance, like you've seen in the previous slide. So for me, consistency matters more than the intensity. I know most of you will dispute, so leave in the comment section your thoughts on that. I'll really appreciate it. So we're going to look at driver number 3, which is sleep quality. Like I said, our speaker last night really talked at length or encouraged us to prioritize sleep. I know we want to make it in life, so any little time we find, we overlook sleep and we keep on working late through the night. So sleep quality refers to both the duration and consistency of sleep. So this is the duration, the time you're sleeping, and also the consistency. Which time are you going to which time are you getting to bed? Is it 10 p.m. or is it 9? Is it 12? Is it 1 a.m. the next day? So poor sleep reduces insulin sensitivity, raises cortisol, and it increases hunger hormones. Those are ghrelin and leptin. I will also record an episode where we talk about this. Raises morning blood glucose level in a phenomenon called the Dawn syndrome. Go read more on it, but I will leave it in the screen with the definition of Dawn syndrome. So if you have diabetes, this is something most of them experiences. So studies show that sleeping less than 6 hours per night increases your risk of diabetes or having insulin resistance or pre-diabetes. Like your sugars will always be high. It alters your post-meal glucose responses. And just no sleep is not rest, it's a metabolic repair. That's why you're encouraged to sleep 9 hours a day. So let me look at you guys. Leave in the comments section, how many hours do you sleep? And what time do you go to bed? Do you go to bed the next day? Like you're sleeping at 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. or 1 a.m. That is the next day. And then you wake up at 7, you've only had 5 hours of sleep. And you've seen studies shows that sleeping less than 6 hours per night increases your risk for diabetes. That's why sleep is one of the modifiable risk factors. So sleep debt accumulates metabolic stress because your body is not able to rest. Your BN, is it BMR? I will leave in the chat, in the screen what it means. You're not doing it. So if you're not sleeping, what are you doing? I love my sleep, so I encourage you guys to also sleep. So we're going to look at driver number 4, which is chronic stress. Yes. So chronic stress means long-term physiological and emotional pressure and not short-term stress. So this is something that has been there. Like it was from short-term stress, like you're stressed here and there, you overlook that stress, and then it turns into a long-term um psychological and emotional pressure. Yeah. So stress raises cortisol, which we have defined cortisol as a hormone that tells the body to release glucose for survival. So let me give you an example. So I know I will use a snake because I do not like snakes. Yes. So you see a snake, what will your body do? Fright and flight. So you're scared and you have to run. So your body releases cortisol which signals the liver to release glucose in huge amounts so that you can run away from that particular stress. So if you have chronic stress, your body is always just thinking, I'm under a lot of pressure. So your body releases glucose for survival. This means even without eating, blood sugar can raise during stressful times. That's you're told to manage your stress. So over time, chronic stress drives insulin resistance that worsen blood glucose control. I will really talk at length about insulin resistance, that you know how passionate I am about reversing insulin resistance. Yeah. So stress management is a metabolic care. If you don't take away anything from this chronic stress, take that with you. Yeah. So we're going to look at driver number 5, which is long sitting time. I'm not here to blame. I'm not here to blame, guys. So sedentary behavior refers to prolonged sitting or inactivity. So research shows that sitting for long hours worsen blood glucose control. So this is not dependent on exercise. So this is just on its own. So this means someone can exercise daily but still struggle if they sit for most of the day. Sometimes people go to the gym and then you end up sitting the whole day. That's why in that slide where I talked about physical activities, talked about breaking long sitting hours. That's why when you sat, use the promenado technique for productivity. It gives you time to wake up and just stretch and just move. So frequent movement breaks helps muscle clear glucose more effectively. And this is common in modern working environment where you have to sit from the time you get to work to the time you leave. So I feel like that is something you should look into. So if you're a professional watching me, leave in the comment section your thoughts on the long sitting time and how breaking it really helps, and also talk about the modern working environment, because I'm still going to ask you guys when I post this on my YouTube channel, and also attach it to the article I'm going to write today, so that we can talk at length about it, because I feel like this is something people are not talking about, the long sitting hours. Yes. So we're going to look at driver number 6, which is timing and pattern. So blood sugar is also influenced by timing and patterns. So this includes when we eat, when we sleep, and when we move. Yes. So late nights, sorry, I have a cold. So late nights, irregular meals, and inconsistent routines disrupt hormonal rhythm. And if you've been listening to me, because this is the last driver I'm going to talk about, throughout these 6 drivers, you will kind of see there's a rhythm. Like when you don't sleep well, you're going to influence your stress hormones, you're going to influence your hunger regulation hormone, that is ghrelin and leptin, which is going to influence your morning glucose control, which is the Dawn syndrome. Irregular eating is going to disrupt the two hormones that tell you when you're full and when you're supposed to eat. So this is something that we really need to talk about, especially this driver number 5, the long sitting hours, and also this driver number 6, timing and patterns. I would really love to hear your thoughts about this, and especially when it comes to skipping meals, which can worsen blood glucose control. So patterns matter as much as the content of what you're eating. That's why I asked you when we eat, when we sleep, and when we move. Really, really matters. So why is it that two people eating the same meal respond differently? I don't know if you guys have ever asked yourself this particular question. This is one of the most misunderstood concepts. That's why I felt like it's much better here. Two people can eat the same meal and see very different blood glucose responses. That's why we don't encourage a blanket approach when it comes to management, even for a normal healthy person. So we're going to look at, it can be because of your insulin sensitivity, which we've looked at what insulin sensitivity is, muscle mass, and your recent activity. I might be going to the gym and building on muscles. I might be a least active person, Sleep quality, you go to bed at 10 or 9 p.m. I go to bed at 1 a.m. I'm constantly under stress, maybe because of my personal um, or professional capacity when I'm eating. Like I'm at work and I'm thinking I have this deadline and I'm still eating. So my cortisol levels are high. Hormonal environment shapes response. So I have hormonal imbalance, and you know what hormonal imbalance is. If not, we're going to talk at length, but go look at the video I created about PCOS. Please go, or is it alive on my other YouTube channel? I really talked at length about hormonal environment. So the key insight here is the same food in different bodies is not the same signal. That's why you're not supposed to give a blanket approach when you're managing people living with diabetes, people with pre-diabetes, and people with my laptop and ningewazimia before we finish. So we're going to look at why food only advice always fail. When food focuses on food, I feel like it ignores the biological context, like we've looked at in those previous slides. This can lead to guilt when numbers don't improve, and I've seen this labeling people as non-compliant or non-adherence. Guys, there are some people truly they are non-adherents, they don't comply, but we really have to dig deeper to know why. Because I know most of the people I've interacted with who are living with diabetes are really very self-conscious with their management, and they take them very, very seriously. Missed opportunity for progress. That's why I always throw these questions to you guys, especially people who are in the research industry like I am when it comes to diabetes. So understanding drivers beyond food creates a space for compassion and better outcome, because the client will feel, or the person living with diabetes will feel understood, and they will know that it's not their fault where their sugars are fluctuating. Like I said, there's some people it's their fault the sugars are fluctuating, but you also have to dig deeper and see all these other drivers before we label someone non-compliant or non-adherent. So we're going to look at what this means for diabetic care. So blood glucose control is multifactorial. You know what that means. This means effective care addresses movement, addresses sleep, addresses stress, addresses the sitting time. Because diabetes is now moving to the economically empowered youth, so they are constantly working patterns alongside food. Yeah. So small changes across multiple drivers are often more powerful than extreme changes in one area. We want to force them to change the food, but maybe someone is constantly under stress, someone is sleeping well. So our education may expand beyond food lists. Prevention requires addressing daily lives. Small changes across drivers really adapt to the bigger picture, and understanding, even for us as healthcare professionals, improve our engagement with the people we are managing or people who are living with diabetes.